All right, we are now live. Today we're just gonna have a little chat how our university is really like a capitalist death cult at this point, and how they're forcing people back to campus, even though we're very much still in the middle of a pandemic with these new variants that are a lot more transmissible than the previous ones. Not to mention the fact that many students also live with family members who are not able to get vaccinated due to their age. And just really, again, it just seems like the decisions that are being made on the university level aren't really being made in accordance with the needs of the students, especially the most vulnerable and marginalized. And just really, just a lot of ableism and not really wanting to actually address the needs of the students and their families who would be impacted if they got COVID and spread it to them, or spread it to their kids who aren't able to get the vaccine. And I was listening to this talk earlier today on this anti-conquista YouTube, and they were talking about the failures of liberalism and AOC. But one of the commentators talked about how the universities have actually been kind of, I think the word they used was like neutered by the corporate state, by capitalism. And I think this seems to be like another example of that. So just some quick thoughts, and I'll pass it over to you. Oh, you're still on mute.
Yeah, so I think you hit a lot on the actual points on it. I was talking to a friend who goes to you've heard of Antioch, right? Um, yeah. Oh, you're also on mute now.
Yeah, I've heard of Antioch. Yeah.
Yeah, she was telling me that that like for her school, even though she doesn't go there anymore, and her current school in Portland is actually forcing her to go in person, but at Antioch, even if they're going back in person, they're still completely allowing um remote sort of um, um, you know, still having the option, and that's all we want. That's all we
Yes.
want. We're
Yeah.
not saying like whatever. If you want, and people that want to go there and can handle it, even if I personally think it's a horrible idea, um, but fine. But to deny people that don't, and I mean, I can as you know, I have no problem disclosing my disabilities and things as to why this is, and because of it, I managed to get into a bare bone service program for students with disabilities, and I actually can read parts of the email if you want me to of
Sure.
how hard they are making it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I recently just applied for that too, because I'm immune compromised and am requesting, remote options. But like you're saying, it seems like all the hoops that they make people go through, like they don't actually want to give people these accommodations or services they need, which is just really disgusting, frankly.
It is, and we can actually totally tie this back to capitalism. I mean, I think another thing that we were like another thing that my friend pointed out who's in Portland was that the fact. Sorry, I have a new setup, and but I have this talking about capitalism. I have wooden floors, and they're great, except they have been warped over time.
Oh.
Yeah, but the thing about it is just like I think too they know a lot of students will like defer if they do like remote, and because of all the money they lost last year with the lack of enrollment. Just a reminder, the universities no longer function as an institution of public good, but just as a fucking business.
Yep.
They just want to recuperate that money. So not only that, I think we mentioned too that we're gonna have more students than last year because again, so many defer. And and yeah, I let me look at the email. But and another horrible thing, if you happen to go to a large university like we do, is the fact that you know what precautions our university is taking by having football games with out of state teams where they might not get be vaccinated or wear masks, and people are just sitting so close. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. You definitely care 100% more money about it. But like you said, it's particularly disappointing in the school social work because we're supposed to be aware. We're supposed to advocate, and we know all of what happens when you need different accommodations. And and it was like this the entire pandemic. It was actually really it really is a mind fuck, because I've taken class with like the gender studies department, and then like right away they were like, oh, we're going remote, and they were super flexible about grading and such and such. um but yeah, the email of okay.
Yeah, and like you were saying too, I mean, I'm not super surprised that the school as a whole, I mean, I don't know if we can name it, I guess, because I put the petitions in the chat. If anybody wants to sign them, we go to the University of Washington. I think it's probably, yeah, the biggest school in the state. Not super surprising that the school as a whole, like from the top, that they're doing this, because like you said, higher education in the US is just run as a business. It's not run as a public good for the benefit, of the students. Hence, for the push to everybody to go back into the classroom while we're still very much in the midst of a pandemic with these new variants that are, highly transmissible, breakthrough cases, all that stuff, people at home, who aren't able to get the vaccine yet due to their age, all while the fact that we've been going to school remotely for like what, a year and a half at this point. Why not continue that until it is actually maybe a little bit safer? And like you said, just give people the option, like, right? If people want to go back in person, okay, I don't think necessarily that's the smartest thing, but okay, give them the option, but also give people the option to do it remotely. But particularly like what you're saying about the School of Social Work, like the 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 push to get people back in the classroom or back in practicum in person goes completely against the profession's school of ethics. We're supposed to be looking out, speaking out for the vulnerable and marginalized, and this type of decision impacts those people the most.
Yeah, and it's again, as um as like I was thinking something, how people are like, under communism you have no choice. I'm like, what fucking choices do I have under capitalism? Because it seems like I have zero, like just a big zero of choices. Or the death panels, like, not, I mean, it's pretty serious, but in the state that's just like right over, next to us is Idaho, where um, Governor Brad Little, I believe, his when you go on to look at their COVID, and I'm saying Idaho has literally gone standard crisis of care, meaning that they have to decide
Ration
what,
it, right?
yeah, ration out, yeah, those death panels that happened in the Soviet Union or like in Cuba or whatever. Um, and um, the thing about it is just that, yeah, and but Brad Little, his entire thing is like, I'm gonna sue Joe Biden for this mandates. I'm like, that's your so when I go
That's your
to
solution.
your COVID website, as people in your state are dying, and as if they sometimes have to come all the way to Washington, which also, okay, I want to say this kind of carefully, because I believe that everyone who seeks help for whatever they come, like, I think borders, even state borders, are um, again, just a imperialist, capitalist holding of resources. So I think, and I that the willingness of the state of Washington to accept these patients is good. But if there is someone to be held accountable, it should be him. It should be what he is like. Um, yeah, and it's just for politics, it's absolutely so disgusting. I want like an international, tribunal court on the level of some of the most awful war catastrophes in the centuries, because to me it almost feels like some sort of
I
mass
mean,
death.
what is it? Almost 700,000 people in the United States have died from COVID. And I was looking at the numbers for China last week. Less than 6,000 people have died from COVID there, and they have a population multiple times bigger than the United States. And I almost wonder too if, our schools push to put people back in person, if it has anything to do with, who's in the White House, how Biden has said he's not going to have any more lockdowns. The eviction moratorium ended. They cut off the extended unemployment benefit. So it's kind of almost like, these liberal institutions are just kind of pretending that everything is back to normal or something, which again isn't super surprising, but just still really disgusting. Not to mention the fact that we're paying thousands of dollars each quarter, and they're not even taking the well-being of us or our families into consideration. It's just really just disgusting on every level. And I mean, I don't know, it's just really unfathomable, frankly, that especially the School of Social Work is acting this way.
Yeah, I mean, because we also sometimes have a strong, or at least some partnerships with the like the the global health department, and I'm like, you are the ones who know how many numbers. Like the University of Washington runs the Institute of Health Metrics,
Hmm.
which they actually have been a huge like pandemic resource. I'm like, you literally are doing this research, it's wrong. And it's like, yeah, it's like, not surprised but still pissed, still hurt. And yeah, on like a level, like the unemployment going away has been just, it's there's so many people right now who are suffering, and this is just gonna skyrocket all the already mental health strain that people have, you know
Well, and I also wonder too, like if this actually goes through, like how many people are just going to have to like, drop out of the school or the program because they're not being accommodated for what is, a very basic need. Just offer me an online, a remote version of the class, as the school and program has been doing for the last year and a half. Again, the pandemic's not over. If anything, like with these new like variants and everything and breakthrough cases, like what the fuck. And again, all of these decisions are being made by, it seems like, administrators who won't be impacted by them, and not consulting the students to actually take our opinions into consideration. Because again, us and the teachers would be the ones impacted by it, but it's being made by these administrators, these higher ups, the people who won't be in the classroom, the people who probably are still working remotely,
remotely.
right? But they're telling everybody else, no, you got to go back, while they get to stay home and do their work virtually. Just that really disconnect. And like I was saying before we went live, so I'm in the CTAP program, so that means they pay for my tuition. I just have to go
Oh,
work for.
yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say, can you like explain what CTAP is? Just
Oh yeah.
yeah.
So
But
yeah,
you were about
the
to. Sorry. Anyway.
Child Welfare Training and Advancement Program. So the state pays for my tuition. I just have to go work for them for however long I'm in school for, which I mean, seems like an okay deal, but again, like the child welfare system is another thing that needs to be abolished. So honestly, I kind of have conflicting feelings of going back into that field. But anyways, so I emailed the director of this program to inquire if, remote options were going to be offered this quarter. And their response was, well, on Thursday, I'm going to be meeting with the regional administrator for Region 4. So I think just King County. And then that regional administrator will dictate to the CTAP program, to us as students, whether practicum will be offered remotely as it has been the last year plus. So again, not even asking for our input, people who will be impacted by it. And again, in the field of child welfare, you're going to be going into people's homes. They're not required to wear masks. You don't know if they're vaccinated or not. You're going to be in close proximity, etc. So this decision is being made by this person who won't be impacted by it. And I see this just seems to be a very common and very depressing and distressing theme, unfortunately.
I put myself on mute because there is someone's cutting the grass out
Okay.
there. So if you hear it, let me know. I can just wear my headphones because they have mics in it. But yeah, I mean, it is. That's the other thing that for me really bugs me is that even from like yeah, like we go into clinical settings all the time. And that is so selfish on so many levels. What about people whose practicum is, let's say, with long-term care? Like you have to go to school and hope that you don't have asymptomatic COVID. And this is dark, but this is the truth. But basically, obliterate an entire nursing home.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is disgusting. Um, but so like at the email, okay. Well, first, like they have an email from. This is like a little blur from this School of Social Work, and it says if you have have a disability or health issue that makes you anxious about attending class in person, please apply for disability accommodation through Disability Resource for Students. So I go ahead and I emailed DRS. Yes, DRS.
Mm-hmm.
And the reply was just like, um, mm, thanks for your email. This is what I've been sending to the other students for requesting remote learning. Um, and then the process for requesting remote through DRS will take up to 6 weeks to review.
Jesus, what the
Yeah, yeah. By the way, yeah, I'm like, it's just, are we not in a state of emergency, or are we like, what's going on? School starts in a couple days, by the way, and because they have been so also the huge lack of transparency, we didn't know what our options would be. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that if we needed to request this, that we should have done it 6 weeks in advance.
Because maybe we thought they would actually be taking the needs of the students into account instead of just making this arbitrary decision to push people back into the classroom while we're still in the pandemic with all this fucked up shit going on around. Like, totally haphazard, not planned out at all. And if they're just sending you that now, like, well, could you have maybe let us know before that this like was the plan?
Can you hear it? If you
I can
can, let
hear
me.
that now, yeah,
Okay,
but then
I'm
it
gonna
went
go get
away.
my headphones.
Okay. But yeah, so I put the two petitions. One of them was started for some colleagues in our program and then some people outside of the program. So feel free to sign and share those petitions. That would be great if you could do that, just to put some more pressure, hopefully, on the university to do the right thing and you know not literally. I mean, again, if they force people back into the classroom, this will literally lead to people like getting sick and dying. Like, how do they not understand that? And but the school of social work was trying to kind of blame the university as a whole and saying, well, we're having to follow all of these like recommendations, and they're making it like very specific how you can get these options. Like, then do fucking better. You're supposed to be the school of the social work. You should be sticking up for the students and the people and the teachers in the program, not just blame. Well, it's actually the university's fault, but we're going to do what we can. I mean, again, I'm pretty just disillusioned with the school and the program at this point, and it seems like, frankly, a lot of people are in that kind of same mindset. And I just wonder, yeah, like, I mean, if they don't offer me like a virtual option for my practicum at CTAP, then I might like another person in our program, they were going to have to like drop out because it wasn't like, it's not a safe option for them to go in person at this point. So I don't know if I'd be doing that. But I kind of want to just like, well, then fuck you. Like, this is not cool.
Yeah, even at solidarity, because again, there are people who are so vulnerable that you are leaving them with two options: die
Or
or
drop
be set
out.
or drop out, start having to pay your student loans again or whatever,
Yeah.
however you're doing this. Um, and then sometimes it's really hard to get back. There's even like a sort of like a process, like the school kind of punishes you if you ever take some sort of sabbatical, which again, it's just, yeah. Um, it's did you is that someone on
Yeah,
the
somebody's comment I was just highlighting up there. But yeah, I mean, the
yeah.
capitalist capitalist death cult, and it's impacting universities. And again, I don't think this is anything unique to the school we go to, the University of Washington. I think this is probably happening at schools all across the country, frankly. It's just more of a structural issue. Again, it's how capitalism affects all of these different systems where the need to make profit, it's run as a business as opposed to being treated as a public good, and it's not run for the betterment of the students or their families who will be hugely negatively impacted by the push to go back in person. So yeah, and yeah, thank you for the comment, Mike. But
Which actually reminds me of a. I mean, we've talked about FAIR before, challenging media bias since 1986,
mhm,
and one of them, I just love this headline because because out of, I mean, most of our like the media in America will, and even in Europe, and
mhm.
even Al Jazeera, which is kind of a big disappointment, but whatever, will just do the boogeyman out of every like socialist or any country that doesn't bow down to United States imperialism. But the New York Times, boy, sorry for being coos, but they have a boner for China. They do, and this is why I love Fair, because they always goes like, New York Times, China needs to rethink is not letting people die from COVID policy. Oh my god,
That would
it's
be
just,
like an Onion headline almost, right?
yeah, and that's what I love about Fair, like this other kind of like liberal thing that liberals are always just like, oh, when they go low, we go high, high, high. No, and then so I love it when people have like a snark and stuff like that. Um, and so yeah, I'm just gonna this record. It still boggles me that a newspaper thinks it has standing to offer advice to China on how to address the COVID-19 pandemic. For those who have been on Mars for the past 2 years, China has had since the disease first appeared 95 493 cases and 4,636 deaths from COVID. I think Mike,
Yep, he
know,
referenced that number,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
I would much rather be living in China right now, frankly, than the United States. If I could convince my family to move there, I would probably think about it, honestly. I don't know how easy or difficult it is to emigrate there, but I mean, think about that. Literally, 100 times more people in the United States have died from COVID, but no, China is the boogeyman. They're the villain here, not this capitalist death cult that, at the end of it will probably be a million people fucking dead. And as you were saying, that's more than, all of the wars, probably World War II on, like, have been killed from this virus. And again, most of it was hugely preventable.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then, yeah, I mean, the university is trying to force us to go back in person. We'll just add to those tallies. So it's just, yeah, technically they're not like a, business, but they are being run and they act like one. So I mean, in reality, that's how we can kind of see them as being, and just tools of capital, forcing people to get, back into the classroom, forcing teachers and students into these very unsafe conditions, with just no regard for human life. And that's basically the capitalist ethos, right?
Yeah, yeah, they will go about like Republicans being like, "Oh, Republicans, they're a death cult." And I'm like, "So are
Look at the
you."
liberal death cult. Yeah.
Yeah, the liberal death cult. Well, there is this but you know, but it's just so it is the fair thing is just so funny. I'm not a scientist, so as much as I like to say I pretend to be an epidemiologist amateur, but like look, I divided like 4,000, you know, by 94,000. That means that out of all the people who have died from COVID in China has been 5%. 5%
Of the
from the
people who
people
got it.
who've gotten COVID. I mean,
Okay.
if we even look at the population size of China,
What is it?
that
1.3, 1.4 billion, I think.
yeah, let's see. So it's 1.3 billion. So like 4,000 divided by what 1.3 billion.
I think I saw a thing. It was like in the US, one in every 500 people has died from COVID. I believe that was the statistic, which is like, how is that? How are people just not out? I mean, but again, it's Democrats' failures, it's Republicans' failures. We're going to keep having these issues if we have, a capitalist mode of production, which puts profit above everything else, including human life, as opposed to China, where they're actually trying to look out for the well-being of the people there. Hence, less than 5,000 people have died, from COVID.
Again, this is not a mathematician, and maybe I'll have to check this later. But looking at it, it doesn't even. I don't think it even gets to 1% because it's like 0.003. It's like their entire
Yeah.
population. So that's kind of like
Which again, you see that, and in a lot of these, socialist countries, they've handled the pandemic exponentially better than the U.S. You look at like Vietnam, China, Cuba, even though they've been under this embargo, this economic warfare by the U.S., they've still handled it amazingly. I think they've actually developed like 5 of their own
yeah.
vaccines. They have universal health care. They have universal higher education. Um,
Oh, not only they have universal healthcare, they have such an amazing universal healthcare that's also culturally respectful. Like you can still get traditional medicine along with like, modern medicine. And there's like a doctor for a community. So you have a
yep,
community doctor checking on you.
yep.
Like even in places like a capitalist place like England, with the NHS, please save the NHS, NHS, any people from the UK, I'm here and I'm rooting for well actually I'm not rooting because rooting in it's a English slang for fucking. I am cheering on for the NHS. But anyway, so I was talking to my friend about it and she was just like, wait, you all don't have community doctors? Or I'm like, no, like there's we have there's other capitalist countries like Britain and New Zealand and all that stuff. But at least I'm like, there's something about the United States that especially loves that has this like capitalism on steroids. Like they really, really, really they go to such an extreme. It's intense. Like even other capitalist countries are like,
Tone it down a little bit, please. You're making
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like chill, like please chill, you know? Like countries like Denmark, they are enjoying themselves because they managed to keep the pandemic in check. So now they get to like, you know, and they talk about these authoritarian regimes. I mean, like, how amazing would it be if every person who is unvaccinated and more than just these, like, oh, you got to show your card, which no, and it being state by state by state, and this idea of American, exceptionalisms, like, no, it's my right to kill you. It's my right to kill you and other people's children's. It's my right to do that. And how dare you try to take it away? We are going into China now. It's so hilarious seeing some right wing people because it's like because they're like Biden socialist. I'm just
I wish.
like I'm like that would be cool.
I know. I saw that. What is it? Like Majority Taylor Greene, like that nut job congressperson. Like she had this video where she was shooting this like high caliber rifle, and on the like the she was shooting in a car, and she like this was like I'm taking down Biden's socialist agenda. It's like how completely disconnected from reality does somebody have to be? Politicians or the people who think Joe Biden has a socialist agenda. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, it's nuts.
Yeah,
I also think it's interesting too. So China doesn't actually have any vaccine mandates there, unlike we kind of have a smattering of those in the U.S. in different ways. But China's been able to vaccinate 1 billion people are fully vaccinated there with no vaccine mandates. I think just again goes to kind of that settler colonial mindset that a lot of people have in the United States, just very individualistic. If it's good for me, but maybe it's not good for my community, well, then fuck you, because I'm going to do what's best for me. And I think it's also very, problematic that the government is, well, telling everybody that we're all in this together, do your part, when we're just, inculcated with these messages of individualism, pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. Now, all of a sudden, the government is concerned about us, but okay, no universal health care during a pandemic. 700 plus thousand people have died. Expanded unemployment benefits were cut off. Eviction moratorium expired. No more survival checks as meager and measly as they were. So it's like, well,
and it's
understand
not like
too.
even just the $300 went away. Like everything went away. You can't even get the basic UI here, and it's shitty. And I see Mike's
Comment.
question, which actually, oh my god, I would love to. I don't know too much about it, but I would love to do research and get back to you. Like we can talk a little bit about it. What I can tell you, again, this is another great thing about NATO and the Europeans during the 20th century. They're like, oh, we beat fascism. Benito Mussolini and Hitler are gone. Oh, but no, Franco, the Iberian Peninsula was under fascism for until well into the 70s. But as long as they were friendly with the United States and other European countries, and they, God forbid, they moved to socialism. Again, the entire 20th century was just like fascism over socialism first. And
Yeah.
so they had this actually very corporate fascism, and it was called Stato Novo, and it ended with this thing called the Carnation Revolution. Now, that is as far as I know. I don't know what Portugal is right now. I know Spain has like a socialist or at least a social democratic people in power, which is really good. And I know Portugal was on the vanguard when it came to decriminalizing drugs.
Yep.
So this is good. I have to make like a
Yeah, I
stick it
need to
up
make a
somewhere.
note. Yeah, I'm gonna take a picture of the comment. So I remember, yeah, because I don't know a whole lot about what's going on there with regards to your question, Mike. But
Yeah, I mean,
very
Mike,
interesting.
if you want to tell us what you've read so far, I would love to, see what what you've observed from that. Um,
And
but
then also too, I think, but it also needs to be pointed out that these so-called like Nordic countries have generated a lot of their wealth through imperialism. So I was reading this book about Sweden actually in the let's see, somewhere around here. The title is Sweden, like how Sweden rode the wave of imperialism to like capitalism or something like that. It's just very, very interesting. We have a lot of politicians in the US like Bernie, AOC, etc., who uphold this like Nordic model. It's like, well, the Nordic model is actually based on the exploitation of people in the global south. One very just like well, it's a fucked up example, but it's not any worse than any other ones, like what Belgium under King Leopold, I think King Leopold II did to the people in the Congo. Like if you didn't harvest enough, rubber or whatever commodity they were exploiting out of that country, they would literally chop off people's like arms and legs, including children, and tens of millions of people died there. But you think about Belgium, you don't really think about that. And Sweden was actually a huge supporter of Belgium and German, colonialism or imperialism in, Africa and abroad. That's why the Nordic model of social democracy is problematic. We actually need a socialist model because social democrats are okay with imperialism, whether it's Bernie or AOC or anybody else. But that was just a bit of an aside.
okay, sorry, I think I hear my cat.
Okay.
I'm gonna let him in, and then but yeah, it's, and even them themselves don't call themselves social democratic countries.
Yeah, because they're
And
still they're still capitalist.
yeah, at least they're honest about it. And here's another thing: Canada pretends to be like such a goody two shoe. Did you know most mining companies end with diamonds, which causes some of the most war torn situations in places like Sierra Leone?
Hmm.
Most of them incorporated in Vancouver, BC. The Canadians who are so much more progressive than us. Nah.
Yeah, look at how they've been, like the tar sands pipeline up there, all of that stuff, how they've treated indigenous peoples in Canada. It's also a settler colonial state, no different than the US. Also capitalist, but they have a, slightly more humane version of capitalism, if you will, but they still benefit from imperialism. They're still a settler colonial state, just a little bit better social safety net than we have here in the United States. They have universal health care, probably paid vacation, maternity, paternity leave, etc. But yeah, and yeah, like the Nordic countries, Canada, they just put a more humane face on capitalism while still exploiting people in the global south. And Canada is still a settler colonial state like the US. And look at how they're treating the indigenous and First Nations people up there who are protesting against these pipelines and this resource extraction that really destroys their environment and way of life. Oh, you're still on mute.
um Thing that, yeah, like, Justin Trudeau as the poster boy for progressive, you know for progressivism. He ordered the what are they called, the Royal
With
Mounted
mounted police or something on the horses, yeah.
PC or something like that, to basically um just go
Oh,
elaborate. Oh my gosh, Mike, do you want to? I love this. Is just something I love about, like, and I'm trying to stream more. It's just like the interaction, because I feel like
that's
last
cool.
time, like, I learned so much more from like
Mhm.
other people, and I personally believe in the redistribution of information. And I'm gonna definitely keep that book as
And all the pictures that keep coming out of Justin Trudeau in like blackface too, like how like disgusting that is. But he has like, okay, why are you not like stepping down? But it's not super surprising, frankly.
Oh, well, that's awesome. This is, you know, we're really happy, and I hope definitely that you'll come again. This is actually, this is this channel, my shameless capitalist promotion. It's like, if you also want to see my channel, I can put it in the chat, or if you want to put it in the chat for that. Um, but yeah, well, I'm really happy, and that you clicked on our rant about it. Um, but to go to this email really quick back again, but I guess I will summarize it because I got a text message again from that. We might we might
Yeah, are you talking about the reporter?
yeah. So we
Yeah, they
might.
just texted me too.
Okay. Yeah. So we might go on we don't even know if we will or not. We're trying to get more media attention to our school, so we're kind of going with reporters, but again, mainstream media is driven by capitalism, so they will have to be like
They'll have to be fair and balanced.
fair and balanced, or at least in a juicy way. Like they're like, oh, is your thing that you just have ADHD and you wearing mask causes you sensory overload, which distracts you from learning because all the time my brain, and again, people don't really get what like people are like, oh, ADHD, you can't focus. No, sometimes you can hyper focus. I will be hyper focusing on my mask, which will trigger my anxiety, which will make me overheat, which will make the mask worse, which it's just this feeding cycle. And they're like, well, can you take like mask breaks? I'm like, yeah, I'll go interrupt my education to go to the bathroom and cry. We used to joke that there's a crying chair in the basement of the bathroom. Um, and I'm thinking about going to the school before it opens to see if like to actually check out the buildings while there's not a lot of people there yet,
Yeah,
and kind of
they're
like
like in
report
the
back.
emails, they're trying to talk up how about these rooms will be, very very well ventilated, there'll be enough space, there'll be fans or air filtration or whatever other type of nonsense that they're trying to justify putting people back in the classroom while we're still very much in the middle of a pandemic. It's like, no, just come out and say it, like you're okay with people dying and getting sick, because that's like the ramifications of this policy if it goes through, right?
Oh, yeah. By the way, we don't even have windows in most of our classrooms.
Yep.
That's the they're like, we're making it a best. I'm like, we don't even have windows. We don't even have fucking windows. On MOOCs, yeah, massive online courses. I had somewhat of an opinion on that. I think they're actually really cool. I know that it can be problematic because sometimes there might be lower quality, but for the most part I love it, and I love if I'm able to go on YouTube and see like maybe MIT has something like a lesson, and and like I hate this, like, oh, degrees are everything. I'm like, no, knowledge can be anywhere.
Mhm.
So if you can actually get to learn for free, so yeah,
Do it.
yeah, WHO actually has like a lot of those, and I actually done some like
Yeah, and how much
uh
of like academia is behind like a paywall, like how like elitist and disgusting like that
yeah.
is, right?
And most of the criticism comes from like those academia places that don't want you to access that. So yeah.
Yeah, I forget their name, but somebody like published a bunch of like online journals that were behind like a paywall a while ago, and of course like they were sent to prison for it, because how dare people have access to that information? It should only be the people who can afford it.
How education is delivered in China? That is like actually, it's such a good question. There's some documentaries I watch, but again, because of the bias still in most media, it's really hard. But sometimes I'm able to watch just documentaries and make like, okay, I see it. I think all education is free. They do have, because even China is like socialist. It'll socialism, and that's the thing I hate, because I have a lot of criticisms about the Soviet Union and Stalin and all these things, but basically everyone acts like, just because something is Marxist Leninism, it all will be like in the Soviet Union. That's not true. They're in China and Latin America. It adapted culturally. So I think it's free. I do think that like Japan, it might be highly competitive. They have their own versions of like Ivy Leagues, but I would have to look more into that. But yeah, um, I would love to, and even places that are super capitalist in the United States, like California, UC Berkeley, fully remote.
Oh,
Uh,
for the fall.
yep.
So I mean, it obviously can be done. Our university is choosing not to not to do it, which like it can be done. We've been doing it a year and a half plus.
But it gotta be
But
that performative liberalism. We're like, we are so
we care
progressive.
about you. We're trying to accommodate, but if we're not able to, it's the school's fault. But we're doing what we can, and we're gonna like have these banners up. We're gonna have like these social justice signs in the hallway, even though we're forcing people into these unsafe conditions. Like we support you. Like we support you. It's like like that meme, with the drone under Trump, it was just a drone, and then under Biden, it had like a BLM and then like a pride flag and stuff like that. This is kind of the university level, right?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a controversial thing that I've been doing on social media, but I've been seeing this meme about people freaking out like, oh, the media only pays attention to Gabby Petito and not missing a murdered indigenous woman. And I'm just like, wow, did white people just discover this? Because it feels like it's just this performative thing. And it really, 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 it's just like last year when like, women in this immigration camp and were having like sterilization without their permission, which
Yep.
in the Latino community, we've known and talked about this for years. But Americans' goldfish memory, I'm like,
Hmm.
they're not talking about it now because
Yeah.
bad orange men
The
gone. So
mass, yeah, like what happened to the kids in cages, like this, I think it's called like Title 41 or something, some bullshit rule that Biden is using to expel more people. Actually, more people that were deported under Biden now than has happened under Trump. Where's the liberal outrage at that? But it's, yeah, well, person in power has a D next to their name, so let's stop talking about abolishing ICE now. That was politically convenient 2016 to 2020, but Biden's in there. We gotta shut up. Yeah, point well taken, Mike.
I will add something to that. I personally, and I will admit to it, I'm a Trotskyite, so that's actually why I really don't like Stalin. And Stalin actually propose socialism under one country, which was completely the opposite of what Marx, Lenin, and Trotsky, which is supposed to be internationalism, and he created social patriotism, which Lenin again said it was like a reactionary thing. So I'm coming from that, and also because he literally killed Trotsky, even though he already was like just in Mexico. I'm like, whoa, dude, you have to go the extra mile. Like, you got it, you won, you got to do whatever. And like, it's not, I mean, but there is like a lot of things that the West won't admit about Stalin. Like, World War II. Do you think we would have won without the Soviet Union? Do you?
No,
I don't
they
think
were
so.
the
I don't think
biggest
so.
reason that, yeah, fascism was defeated. 20 plus million Soviets died as a result. And I really like the perspective that Walter Rodney presented about Stalin and his book. Is think the title is "The Russian Revolution: A View from the Third World," and he presented a very nuanced, version of Stalin and the USSR at the time, basically, saying that, kind of Stalin was a product of the system, whatever, failures or bad things that happen, we can't just blame it on Stalin. It was kind of the larger political climate in general. And also, I think it needs to be pointed out the standard of living in the USSR, since the socialist revolution took place was increased dramatically. They were able to have universal education, universal medical care, retirement, paid vacation, etc. And
Yeah.
also, just the fact that actually a poll came out, a majority of people in Russia actually want a return to the Soviet style system because they've been, living under the horrors of capitalism for a few decades. And I don't think Stalin was perfect. He's not sinner or saint. I actually had a live stream with this Dr. Asatar Bear guy who likes to defend, Stalin and for all the things that was kind of accomplished under the USSR. But I think, it's yin and yang. There's obviously still some contradictions that they needed to work out. But I think, overall, the USSR was a force for good in their country and the world.
Yeah, and I mean, it really was. There we to deny all the achievements, all of that, and once it dissolved, and most people in Russia didn't actually want
Want
to.
that? Yep.
Yeah, they would voted for it to stay, but it was forced upon them. And you know what happened immediately? The most good faith example of oligarchy.
I think the standard of living went down right after, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like it, it's just like a disaster. But and also everyone loves this website. Everyone mentions it. Mike, if you want to like actually read. Oh well, thank you for asking questions. I really, really, really
The dialogue, the exchange, that's what's cool about the live stream, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and bringing up these questions, and get us to think about and critically look at the propaganda in the West. If you haven't heard of this website, you can go to Marxist.org. God, I love Marxist. It's like the Marxist archive, and you can find the writings of people on Marxism, but you can also find the writings by people themselves. Like you can find writing by Stalin, you can find writing by Lenin, you can find writing by Trotsky, you can find writing by late Mao, you can find all these kinds of writing. I probably have to hop off though because I'm gonna go see what the mess is with with the with the reporter, just so we can get some of that. But I really appreciate it and thank you. But I think the end is that we go to a university and a program that claims that they care about diversity, equity, and
Inclusion,
inclusion.
right? Yeah.
Rainbow flag.
But they're acting like diametrically opposed to those values that they're saying that they're trying to uphold. So it's like a square peg in a round hole. Like, make it make sense. You can't, but this is the capitalist death cult at the university level. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that's the thing I love so much about those people are so pro capitalism. They're like, no, it's the logic. And there's this book I want to find that I had. It's called Logic of Marxism. And it really made me think and Marx himself actually. Wait, no, this side.
Other way. Okay. There you go.
And yeah, and it actually explains how capitalism will do the most illogical things, but then they will basically turn these illogical things into like logical. It's like no, even though it's not based on reality at all. And they're like no, yeah. the market, and it's just this forced logic. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's like, Lenin talked about, concrete analysis of the concrete conditions. Our school is definitely not doing that at all. Definitely not being very Marxist Leninist. The University of Washington, they're just being very, I don't know.
Not even progressive. Not even not even smart.
Not even living up to liberal values, I would say, right?
Yeah. And I want to mention University of Washington is in Washington State.
Yep.
We're often touted as a super progressive state. We have one of the most progressive tax systems. So the way our university is funded is all by
endowment, right, from the wealthy,
like Bill Gates
foundations,
Paul Allen, so they get to decide how that money is spent.
Mhm.
If we had something of a better tax system, then the university would have more more like maybe say in things that are just not to make money. But since the 1980s, the neoliberalization of and the I think someone in sociology has a term called like the McDonaldization. It's like a term, but yeah, basically that. And so we're bound to rich people, and this is why people are like philanthropy. It's really good. I'm like,
No,
philanthropy is
we
a way
shouldn't
to.
need philanthropy.
No, we shouldn't. But thank you so much. I might so I'll try to leave some of those resources, or if you want to put them in the chat. I really enjoy this. We should, yeah. School's coming up, but maybe we'll be so angry we'll have
Have to
more.
do it again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do it
I'm
again.
also kind of curious, like, what are the teachers' perspectives on this,
Oh,
especially
oh,
within our program? Like, are they in support of this? Shouldn't they also be pushing back if they're living up to our profession's values? That's something I was kind of
yeah.
interested in. And are they?
I
Oh, I don't think they're represented by a union. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah,
Um,
well, because most of them they specifically make them adjuncts to take
Adjunct.
advantage of them
Yeah.
as much as that. There was one there was one thing I will have to bring up.
Oh,
The UW Daily had one where like someone interviewed a professor and they were
okay.
like, "It's a uh, you know ticking like a ticking time bomb." Oh, here it is. It's like UW faculty unconvinced about return to in-person learning.
As they
Um,
should be, rightfully.
yeah, yeah. Like let's see. Even okay, going back to the classroom is sort of everything we're told that people should be cautious about. Eva Chervinesky, American literature professor with the English department, said, "You're going to sit in an unclosed space with ventilation with 30, 40, or 70 people for 2 hours, and your primary activity is going to be talking." Like
Yes.
that teacher who basically gave all of the people on the front row these little
COVID.
children COVID, and it was
Yeah.
just so fucking crazy. So, hey, if your kid wants to sit in the back row, let him. Let
Oh,
them.
quick, any tips or highlights that you were gonna talk to the reporter that maybe I should highlight on? Because in the text, I just said, well, doesn't seem like the school is really taking the needs of the students into consideration. It seems very irresponsible to send us back to the classroom with these highly transmissible variants, immune compromised people, families, who have kids at home who can't get the vaccine. It just doesn't seem like they're taking the
People
needs
who
of
don't
this.
have childcare, which
Yep.
is not again also classes. I think a really good point that earlier is just to because they do all these sound bites, but to bring the collective petition into
Mhm.
to show that it's just not us, that most of us don't want it, and
Mhm.
what
At
is
least give people
democracy.
the option that do want it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll also text you about it. Has been great. I
Yep.
hope everyone please stay safe.
Mhm.
And it's a really hard time if you feel like capitalism is always like you gotta be doing stuff, stuff, stuff.
Mhm.
But just take a break. It's in the middle of a pandemic and just don't feel guilty about it.
Yes, I think all of our collective, like, mental health is, like, yeah, taken. I mean, it wasn't good before the pandemic, but I think collectively it's just gotten worse, especially I'm speaking from, yeah, being in the United States for sure, like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, a lot of social workers there's a long list to be able to talk to therapists, even social workers, because everyone isn't necessarily wanting care. And again, when you have an amazing, horrible healthcare system where it's all based on profit,
Yep.
we have a shortage of things that are completely actually super important.
Like hospital
Yeah.
beds or
Hospital beds,
doctors, yeah.
they're like, oh, it's going to strain our infrastructure. I'm like, why is there an
Why is
infrastructure?
it like that?
So,
Oh,
yeah,
because it's not profitable to maybe have, hospitals set up for a pandemic. It's profitable to, have like the bare amount of resources. So, profits. So the CEO and the board of directors at, these health insurance companies make money. Yeah.
And the worst thing is like we have the money to do it. The
Yes.
United States is the most wealthiest, if I'm pretty sure it's the wealthiest country in the world. And yet, boogeyman China built a hospital in like a week or something when the pandemic
Mhm.
first hit.
And they have, I just saw like a thing like 600-kilometer-an-hour trains, and we have like
Oh
100
yeah.
kilometer Amtrak, like that goes the speed of your car, and they have one that goes like 300 miles.
Oh, and they're all super rickety and old. I took one from here to Vancouver because everyone's like, "Oh, it's so nice, big extra." I'm like, "It's
No.
the worst experience ever."
Yeah.
It was better to take a Greyhound, and which, by the way, that's another thing. Companies own already all the tracks, and like we really are stuck in our.
It's an empire in decline in so many ways, and the pandemic has just really, exposed that even more, I feel like.
Yeah, forever in the Gilded Age. But thank you,
Yeah,
and
thanks again.
we'll talk to you soon, and just like you know keep going.
Yeah.
Workers of the world unite, and people of the world unite. We're more powerful than all of them together. And once we all realize that,
Can't
then
stop us, right?
it can't stop us. And that's why all the time these governments will, they talk about the crackdown in these authoritarian countries. When in the United States, it has been and it still is a incredibly dangerous to be a socialist, to even name yourself as a socialist. So but and because they're terrified that once we know how powerful we are all together,
Mhm.
that they can't stop us.
Yep, for
Yeah.
sure. Good
Yeah.
words to end it on. I like it.
Yeah. All right,
All
thank
right.
you.
Catch you
Thank you,
later.
Mike. I will definitely look at some of those questions or also let you know what I find out. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.